The streaming technology depends on your bandwidth on both sides, on the server side and on the consumer side. When you all stream from the same service, then it's more constrained on the server side or on the bandwidth of your communications provider. But in the professional environment, we have standards like Dante and there are buffering technologies. But again, how much are we willing to pay for it?
So can you share some of the cases where you had these acoustic, special acoustics challenges, projects, maybe one particularly complex one that you could talk about?
Yeah, well, again, it's about the reliability of a speaker. Especially, when you go to some public events, like viewing, you often hear them, 1, 2, 3, sound check, 1, 2, 3, sound check, right? And often the people, like when they connect to things and set things up, a woofer, which is part of the speaker, especially a tweeter, if it's overloaded, can fail. It's normally not a normal operation when everything's set up, but during the setup, it could be easily failed. So we were forced to build special electronics into the speaker in order to avoid the failure. Or the failure not to harm the speaker. That's one of the challenges.
Would this be an amplifier or something?
No. It's a passive component inside the speaker to basically prepare the speaker for the idiot that operates the speaker outside of their dimensions, but in order not to kill the speaker.
Oh, like a limiter.
It's kind of limiter, yeah.
Yeah.
But do this on a passive way, yeah.
Right. Because I know I've been a kind of a hobby DJ, and I know how DJs love to keep cranking up the volume as the night goes on, as they keep drinking. And then, I've seen situations where everything just cut off.
Yeah.
Completely, something got overheated.
That's the amplifier usually.
Amplifier, yeah.
That's the amplifier usually. So that's another one meaning the thermal management, temperature control of the audio to limit the power without impacting the sound quality, because you don't want to go into the limitation and get quirky noise or some kind of things, which typically happens on the products which haven't anticipated that use case.
Okay, so are there any kind of famous cases where special acoustics were used and had a really profound effect? You mentioned something like Sydney Opera House.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a really complex job for the acoustic team over there.
Yeah.
Can you share some cases like that? Just to open our eyes as to this entire world of special acoustics for people who don't know.
Well, Aida Opera Verona is one of those places which are constantly optimized. The Beethoven's Hall in Vienna, those places, of course, the Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg. I would say, I think we had a fire in the big church, Notre Dame in Paris.
Yeah.
Those St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Those cases, of course, these kind of landmark cases where everything costs a fortune and people have huge discussions about everything. But again, this is maybe not the one where most of the average acoustic installer is making the core money.
Right. It's more like the train stations.
The train stations, the classrooms, the university classrooms, the school auditoriums, those kind of places. The problems are similar from a technical perspective. They're just not so prominent. But that's where I would say the usual meat is for the typical installer.
So what makes you, we're here in Taiwan, and what makes Taiwan a place where you are able to help these clients, these customers in the West? What's special about Taiwan as far as special acoustics?
Taiwan is home to some of the world's best manufacturers that are manufacturing for the big brands. So we in Taiwan is an OEM island. I mean, Taiwan has few own brands, but it's manufacturing for everyone, right? And this also applies to speakers. And then plus we have the semiconductor industry here, so that some of the more integrated, especially signal processor ICs that are used to manipulate the acoustic signals, those of course are made here. So there's some engineering background, although most of the software and advanced design know-how is more in the United States and in Europe. But when it comes to bringing this together, then Taiwan is pretty good. Although most of it is still manufactured either in China or in Southeast Asia, but the engineers are here.
Right.
Whereas for the headphones, I have to say, this industry already completely moved to Shenzhen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the headphones is interesting because I imagine there's a lot of entrepreneurs watching this, and I learned that those like Apple Beats headphones cost like $14 US to make,
Yeah.
but they sell them for like 200, 300 US.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow. And so when you're paying $300 for headphones, or let's say $50 for headphones, are you saying that you're only paying for the brand?
I would say you pay for not just for the brand, you also pay for the painstaking engineering
Oh, okay.
that before you got the product, you have to keep in mind there's a lot of work that was happening before. And I think you know those Apple AirPods that you put in your ear.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of copies of them in the market.
Right.
And some people have experienced what are these copies. Well, the color may not be completely right. The shape is a little bit different. The Bluetooth communication is not that great. Yeah, but when you buy a branded, at least branded product, they have usually worked out most of these issues.
True.
But I can guarantee you there were lots of people working on this to get that right.
Yeah.
And there must be some really, really unhappy guy on the other side saying, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want this, you see? And I would say few companies have the power to push that through to the end. I mean, other famous brands are Jabra, doing a great job, JBL doing a great job, Hammer Kardon, Rode for the podcast microphone technology. So there are great niches that are being occupied in special and niche markets. But my feeling is that there's always somebody who says, this can be done a little bit better.
Yeah.
We are not perfect yet. On the next product, I want that little thing even better.
Right.
And I think it's taking those people over an extended period of time to drive it. And in acoustics, yes, that's a big one.
Yeah, so it's when you're talking about the $14 manufacturing cost, it's the wrong way of looking at it, I think, because there's probably millions of dollars of R&D that were spent earlier to then manufacture this thing for $14.
And that is also the dilemma of the whole special acoustics industry. You have to work very, very hard to get something right.
Mm-hmm.
And you do not know the denominator, meaning above which quantity you can spread that cost.
Right.
Or whether you miss out on something and killing your entire product. So it's not an easy job.
Yeah.
And it takes persistence, continued improvement, dedicated analysis, root cause analysis. I mean, you know, there were a lot of people that come up with these Bluetooth speakers. I'm not sure what your experience is, but I found that a lot of Bluetooth speakers were difficult to connect to.
Yep. That's a universal experience.
Correct?
Yeah.
And I would say a lot of people just didn't get that connection though, because they have, on the one side, they have the regulatory requirement to get through the EMI permit, and on the other side they have a usability case. And then they maybe didn't plan the antenna right, or you had to go around, and it didn't connect, or it interferes with other signals and those things. Isn't it annoying?
Yeah, I mean, we're supposed to have flying cars by now,
Yeah.
and I can't even connect to my Bluetooth speaker well in 2024.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have less issues with like AirPods or Galaxy Buds or some of the better companies. They seem to work a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I wonder how many engineers have been working on this to get it there.
So with every strong business starts with a problem, and an entrepreneur that solves this problem and can, potentially make millions, billions. What are the opportunities right now for entrepreneurs who want to get involved in a special acoustics business?
I would say the best way is to, do they have a market access and niche where there is an obvious gap and where there's also money to be spent on, because there are some gaps, but there's no money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a recipe for bankruptcy. But as I said to you before, there is a huge staff shortage on skilled people in this industry. So frankly speaking, there is still a steady demand for
Right.
people that solve those places. And if you have a way to motivate staff or to have good teams that can actually do the on the ground work, then you will be very popular in this industry.
Yeah, I can almost imagine like starting a business surrounding technical expertise and having a team of engineers who you can then dispatch around, just because there's not enough of them to go around.
Yes,
Yeah.
because if there's a show, there's every rarity is driving the prices up. When the prices go up, then there's a business to be made.
Yeah.
Yeah? And often it is that those so-called fancy industries will soon be overstaffed. I mean, I'm amazed how many AI experts suddenly pop up on every corner, right?
Yeah.
And where are our professional acoustic installers?
Yeah, it's not sexy right now.
Not so sexy, right? So sometimes I have to say to the audience, especially to the younger audience, sometimes the unsexy ones is the one that make you rich.
Definitely.
And those ones which are sexy is probably not getting you so.
But here's a challenge that I've seen for this entire acoustic engineer career. The way we consume music right now is generally through streaming,
Yeah.
which means that you're never going to get very good sound quality as long as you're streaming, which means that the consumer now wants access to 100 million songs, but then at the cost of sound quality.
I don't think so.
No?
No, because the streaming technology depends on your bandwidth on both sides, on the server side and on the consumer side. Of course, when you all stream from the same service, then it's more constrained on the server side or on the bandwidth of your communications provider. But in the professional environment, we have standards like Dante, and there are buffering technologies. Also, when you do like side-to-side communication, they secure that there's sufficient bandwidth, and then there's a predefined buffering quality. These are challenges or problems that can be overcome. So that's not a generalized output. But again, how much are we willing to pay for it?
Yeah.
And I think that's on the consumer side, that there's only so much money we are willing to pay for it. And if you think about a company like Spotify, who's still struggling to make money.
Oh, are they? I didn't know.
Yeah, because they have to pay so many royalties and on this, but there's only so much money we're willing to pay per month for our 100 millions of songs that we want to have access to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, for the creators that offer, it's a hard time, and I think most of the creators now tend to make more money from the concerts and from the experience, and they use it as an advertisement platform, but they make money elsewhere since they cannot sell CDs anymore. But when it comes to the professional setup, those ones usually wearing the same color as your shirt, black shirt, and with the big boxes and setting up the tools and build it down, they're in short supply.
Right.
They're in short supply. Those ones that are willing to go on a tour for several weeks on the trucks and
Yeah.
not so family friendly life though. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to really love it to do it, for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I want to get more into some of your projects. Now, I know you have to be a little bit careful about revealing your clients. Are we allowed to talk about the church?
I can say yes, I'm serving a certain church business. Yes, that I can do.
Because when I met you and you shared a little bit about the church project, I thought this was fascinating, especially because they're a long-term client of yours, right?
Yes.
How does a church become a long-term client for Special Acoustics? Don't they just do it once and done?
Yeah, but as you mentioned before, we are serving a European customer. The churches were built a long time before speakers were invented.
Yeah.
And also a church will be renovated from time to time. Maybe every 25, 35, 40 years. And typically what happens is when they renovate the churches, they also change and update the speaker systems. Now, in Germany, we have a church in almost every village.
It's good business.
It's a consistent business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even though each church does not buy so often, but there's a huge quantity. And the beauty about this, at least in Germany, is that we have a church tax. So if you are in a church, the government will collect the taxes from your paycheck and give to the churches. And these churches have to spend the money eventually. So at least it happens, you know.
Yeah.
And every 25 or 30 years, you may want to update your speaker system.
Right. So I think there is an opportunity for a smart entrepreneur to find a niche within kind of like this old Europe, whether it's churches or, for example, very old train stations, very old universities, where there's updating, renovations, custom installations. If somebody were to position themselves as a provider of the Special Acoustics in Europe, I mean, I think they could do pretty well.
Yeah, and actually that the company, of course, this market is not new. It's been there before. There are players that are already established, I mean, to be realistic. But then again, there's still opportunities to franchise for those established players and do the installations, because that is really short supply.
Yeah.
Yeah. The people are crying, finding electricians, finding people that do the real work, handcraft work, and have the skill to do it right and not do it 3 times. Yeah, there's demand. Absolutely.
Okay, last question. So if somebody wants to get into this industry in Europe, or if they're looking for a new partner, how does Celinius help out for Special Acoustics?
Well, we had a few trade shows in Europe, especially. One of the most, I would say, the best trade show is the ISE in Barcelona, Integrated Systems Europe, where there's a huge sound section, but there's also IoT and public display and public signage business. Because today it's not audio only. You also have video content, you have video walls, and all of these things need to be installed, managed, maintained, are part of a large installation. And I would say I can recommend young people, learn this, go, try it. Don't be afraid to do some work, because you're gonna meet interesting people, you're working on real stuff, and there's money to be made, really.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Florian.
Thank you, Michael.